Hey everyone, today's video is all about prioritizing your marriage within ministry and everything that we've had to experience together as a married couple, but also just the challenges that come with being in ministry, with being in a church, and but also the blessings of it as well, because it's such a blessing to be able to be in ministry, to help other people, to give your time, to give your efforts. But we know that it comes with its challenges as a married couple and as a family. And so we want to talk about our experience within that today. And so maybe we should give a little bit of context about where we're at right now, what our position is within ministry, if you want to start us off.
Sure. Yeah. So we're a part of a church here in Leeds, and your parents are actually the pastors
Yeah.
of the church that we're a part of. And you and I have many roles together collectively. My main role is head of teams, and so what that means is I oversee different teams and make sure that we have the volunteers, that we have the training needed, that the teams are operating happily and healthily.
Yeah.
Oh, we've also done student ministry. We're transitioning towards young professionals. Is going to be more our gear. What do you do? What else do we do?
Yeah, no, that's a great foundation of what we do. And then I'm in the worship team. I lead the worship team. And like Faith was saying, we play a big part in the youth, in the students, and we're trying to transition from students to young professionals together. And we're some of the leaders within the church as a core part of the leadership group, and so we help my mum and dad and my pastors with anything that they need in any big program or events that happen. We take a core part in that, in the infrastructure, in the processes and the systems of it. Oh, and I lead the social media team, the communications team as well. And so I take the role of leading the social media team, photography, live stream, website. So together we lead a big part of the church.
We got a lot on.
We try and carry the heavier load to release the burden from my mum and dad, I think, is a big part of it, and so that they can help pastor people and we can help the operational side of things. But obviously, we do help with the pastoral side of things. That's just working in ministry, working with people. People come with blessings, but people come with problems as well. So we try and work together with my parents and that. And so that's our, hopefully give you a little bit of context about our position, about where we are. But within that, we want to talk today about prioritizing. How do we prioritize our relationship? How do we prioritize our family when working and being in ministry? And this comes in many practical forms, but I think the first thing to say that I want to say to start off is that you can do many practical things to try and help prioritize your marriage, but if at the core of it, if your heart is still, you want to do more in ministry or you want to help other people more than you do your family, then I think that's the starting point. That's the foundation. If the heart or the mind isn't in the right place to actually wanting to do that, then there's almost no point doing practicals, because you will always revert back to that simple practice of prioritizing other people, prioritizing ministry over your marriage. And so maybe you find yourself in that position, you're like, I don't want to, but I do. Then ask that question. Ask that question, why do you want to prioritize ministry? Why do you want to prioritize the church over your marriage, over your family? Is it you got some problems you don't want to face, or you just love helping people and marriage seems like a big investment? Or and I think ask yourself that question and just be honest with yourself is the biggest thing. But I know at the heart and the foundation of our marriage and our family is we care about each other not more than God, but more than helping other people, more than ministry, more than church, because I believe that your first ministry is your marriage. And so maybe you want to give a little bit of context or explain our hearts on that, about that first ministry, being the family, being
Yeah,
your marriage.
I found what you said so interesting, because it's I think it's tempting for Christian couples to, what brings you together is that unity of having a common cornerstone that is Christ. And so it's really easy to confuse Christ and ministry. And there's a difference between the two. There's the ministry and, spreading the word of God and discipling people. That is all for the same reason that you have your marriage. And so there's this unifying cornerstone that is Christ. But I think sometimes what happens, particularly in Christian couples, is that there's this idea that church is first, that ministry is first, forgetting that, like, no, Christ is first, and Christ has given you this blessing and this responsibility to care for your marriage well. So I found what you said really interesting, because it's so easy to fall into a pattern, especially if you have a good marriage, to fall into a pattern of, okay, my marriage is sorted, so I can kind of put that on the back burner.
Yeah.
And
Or even on autopilot.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just think it's just going to take care of itself.
Exactly. But you have to constantly, even when your marriage is good and fruitful, you have to constantly be tending to that garden in a way that you can't tend to ministry and your marriage in the same way. And so it's like that is your routine, and that is your day in and day out is your marriage and tending to your marriage. And ministry is something else as well. And so learning how to prioritize that, and it may feel challenging to prioritize that when you feel like your marriage is in a really good spot. Feeling like, okay, it feels like I should now prioritize, some of these pastoral issues above that because my marriage is in a good spot, but it's not what we believe we're called to do, is to keep tending to your marriage first, and let like the next tier kind of be people ministry.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, marriage isn't work, but it takes work. And I think once you recognize that it's, like you said about tending that garden, like, it will grow weeds, it will go overgrown if we're not careful, and you can't just put it on autopilot. You have to constantly do that. But I think that's really good, and that's the foundation of it. I think that's the foundation of our heart, and I believe God's heart, Christ's heart for us as a people, as a church, that it comes out. Good ministry comes out of an overflow of a good marriage, out of a good family, and some practical ways in that we've outworked that. It was interesting because I think some people, when they get married, or this was my expectation when I got married, is that everything in my life would be cancelled and I would go into marriage as a clean slate. I would have no meetings, nothing scheduled, no plans, and it would be like I almost just start a new life where I have no commitments at all. And I don't know why I thought that or expected that, but I did. And so when we got married, we came off our honeymoon, we came back, and I was like, why is there so many why is there so many things in my schedule? Why am I almost on the back foot already? And within the first couple of weeks of us getting married, we sat down and looked at our schedule and we said, right, okay, where are our priorities going to lie? And what time do we have?
Yeah.
And we laid out everything that we'd already committed to, everything that we wanted to put our hands to. And we realized that there were too many things for the amount of days we had per week. We wanted to have the leadership meetings within the church. We wanted to have the Sunday services, but we weren't going to allow those things to come in the way of our marriage. And so one of the non-negotiables that we had were a date night together, a night that's just for us. And I would recommend that whether you've got kids or not. Thankfully, at the moment we don't have that, and so it's less responsibility and easier for us to have that time and schedule that in. But we will continue that whether we have kids or not. And there was other meetings and family night. We have a night just with the whole family come together. And we laid it all out, and we had so many things planned of where we didn't even have time for our date night each week. And so we had
Let alone a free night just for us to spend time doing what brings us like joy and fulfillment, or like development in our own selves.
We didn't have it. No, every night was filled.
Yeah.
And so we were like
from like 4 to 10 at night.
Yeah. And so it's crazy in that sense. And so we had to be really brutal with our time and say, what are we going to cut out? What are priorities? What do we see fruit in our lives? And where are we wanting to go long term? What is going to fill us and put us in a position in which is going to extend the kingdom of God and fulfill the purpose that we have, while also filling our tanks, giving us time for ourselves and doing things that are fulfilling to us. All of those things, and we had to do it. And so we had to cut out different meetings or different things that were hard, because we could see how these things were good.
Yeah.
These things were still good. They weren't bad things, but they weren't the best.
I don't even know if I would agree that they weren't the best. To be honest, I think for us it was, or for my experience, it was that, our week was completely chock full of different things and things that we were seeing like the Lord move in, which was really fulfilling, seeing the Lord move in each of these ways. But we had to kind of humble ourselves and realize, like, no, these ministries can survive without us. And so I think it wasn't like if we left, like, that ministry would collapse. And so for me, like, the way I decided what to take out was like, okay, where are we most useful right now? And where are we most utilized? And it was hard because we worked really hard in all of these different ministries.
Yeah.
But there were some where we took on a more prominent role than others. And it wasn't that they like needed us by any means, because, it is ultimately God that does it. But it was like, okay, we can't be everywhere. We can't help everywhere. And like, what can we cut out? And that's really, and I think we freed up like 2 nights, maybe one, maybe it started with one, but we ended up freeing up another one somehow.
Yeah, one of the nights kind of naturally got a little bit more free. But we needed that time to rest for the new week, because I think, it worked out as it was on a day that we already gave so much, and so we needed those time just to rest and be ready for the next week. So I think some of the practicals that we did to kind of come back to the beginning was like look over our schedule and say to ourselves, where do we need to take things out, and be really honest with ourselves. And I think it was good of what you said of like, no, maybe it wasn't they want the best, but you kind of do have to humble yourselves a little bit and say, it can work without me, it can still exist.
Yeah.
And what are some other ways that we've practically outworked it?
Definitely like reorganizing our schedule and seeing what we commit to. I think also not like, I hear the phrase of know when to say no. But I think even more important of knowing when to say no is being able to say no. And so we've really practiced saying no to things. And a lot of the times that's like social stuff. So we can, give our energy elsewhere and stuff. And so it's that we do practice saying no, and, not letting guilt or shame creep in of feeling like we needed to be somewhere all the time, because then you just get into routine of, I'm doing this because I'm supposed to do this. And we never wanted our ministry to be out of obligation, but out of deep love and compassion.
Yeah, and the desire to do that for other people and for God.
Exactly. So I think saying no, being bold with your no, being generous with your no's, because in ministry, if anyone else has any experience, there's always more that you can do. There's always, more hours that you can put into something, more skills that you can utilize, more people that you can meet with. There's always the opportunity for more and more and more and more. And so it sounds counterintuitive, but being really generous with no's, so that you can produce, like, the time that you give away is quality time, not just quantity of time.
Yeah.
So I know if I sit down with someone and I'm meeting with them one-to-one, I'm not thinking in the back of my mind, okay, I have an hour and a half for this, so I got to make sure I'm managing this time so that I can get to my next meeting or I'm meeting with someone else. And no, this person has my time and my focus. To be generous with no's, and if you feel shame or guilt for that, do the brave thing and work through that guilt and shame of why is there that sense of obligation that you need to do everything everywhere all of the time. And I think the other reality is, especially if you're in a leadership position in the church, is whether you like it or not, your eyes are on you, and people somehow are modeling like your behavior and what you do. And with that can come great blessing, because you can be a leader and you can set expectation and it raises yourself to a higher standard. But on the other side of that is you have to be mentally prepared for people to disagree with your decisions. And that comes with a lot of confidence, or you can combat that with a strong sense of confidence and conviction of how does the Lord want me to utilize my time, and what in my life reflects the life of Christ. Because yes, Jesus went, when during his ministry, he went and he healed and he preached and he served. But there is a lot of time in scripture where he goes away, and like people are following him, and he goes away to have solitude in that time alone with God. And so you have to be confident in what is most reflecting the life of Christ.
So
and there is that quietness and that solitude and slow feet and a quality of interaction over interaction over quantity.
Yeah. I think that's so good, and I think firstly how you've connected that to what Jesus did, but also I think I've been blessed as an individual to not feel bad to say no. But I
Good for you. That's great.
Yeah, no, I don't mean that in the sense of I've never felt bad saying no. That's not true. But I've never been taught to feel bad, and I hear it often. And this isn't to get at the church or to get at anyone specifically, but I have heard it on numerous occasions. Heard people say, "I've said no to this" or "said no to that," and a church or a person has made me feel bad for it, and saying that's wrong, like your heart posture's wrong. But I've been blessed to be put in a church and in a position of where if I've said no, they've honoured that. And I say that I say that because I believe it's healthy, but too I just want to like say that out loud. I feel really blessed for that. And if you are in that position of where you've been shamed or feel guilty for saying that, then it's hard, because you have to have that two-sided coin of being confident in yourself to say that, but still keeping that heart posture of being humble and meek, like Christ.
Yeah.
And I thought it was good what you were saying about being confident in yourself, which is something I've struggled with, but I've never had the struggle of like having the humble and the meekness to it. But I've struggled to come out and say no when I've needed to say no sometimes.
Wait, so you struggle to say no?
Sometimes I've struggled to say no, but I've never been shamed when I have said no.
Ah, I see the difference that you're discerning there. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because I think a healthy person within ministry is able to say no, but still be humble at the same time, and still be meek to know I'm saying no because this is the healthiest thing for me and the best thing for me. But a healthy church creates an environment of where you can say one or the other.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think you shouldn't have to give an explanation of why that is as well. But that's something that we're kind of passionate about in that. But I think finally, just to finish off, is if that's you, of where you are in a position of where you feel bad for saying no and you've been overworked, then come to God in that and give it to him and ask God, like, is it me that is just feeling shame for no reason? Is it because I'm in a position that's not very good? Or is it that I just need to be confident in myself? And the reason we have this conversation now is so that we can produce a church that is healthy and that it most represents Christ. And we're just trying to help ourselves, but help others produce a healthy church, so that we can be the people that most represent who Christ has called us to be. And so if you've got any thoughts on that, if you've got any questions on that, then please, we'd love to hear what you think, what your experiences are down below in the comments, or even please message us. We'd love to connect with you, create a community that produces a church that is healthy through community, through relationship, and through connecting with one another. And so I hope that through our conversation today, through the questions and through the insights that we've experienced, and through our story, that you've been able to take something for yourself, but also ask yourself the question of, am I being a healthy person that is representing Christ, and how can I take that next step to further represent Christ, reflect Christ, and help other people around me do that as well. So yeah, and I hope that you can connect in with our other videos and with our later videos. Love you all and speak to you soon.